expecting a lot of families to join us today. And I just want to be cognizant of everybody's time. I know it's in the middle of many people's day, or perhaps at the start of your day, depending on where you are. And we're going to get started now. I'd like to thank you all for joining us. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to connect with Dickinson again. I know many of you have joined us for a number of these summer series programs for our incoming families, and I hope that the content that we've been sharing with you has been useful. We truly are looking forward to welcoming your students back to campus and getting back to a more normal year for all of our Dickinson students here. And I just want to thank you for choosing Dickinson with your student, and we are looking forward to welcoming your family here, whether you'll be joining us next week, the following week, or the week after that, depending on your student's move-in time. Today we have a program that we'll be sharing along with my colleagues, some resources and information about how to help your student thrive at Dickinson. We have a lot of resources here to help support your student and to offer the support that you have been offering them as their parents and guardians over their lifetime. And now that you're getting ready to hand them over to us, we want to let you know that we are really thoughtful about the care that we will be providing to them, and that there are many resources here to support them in many regards, whether that's from a health and safety standpoint, whether that's from a social standpoint, or an academic standpoint. So like I said, we have a lot of content to share with you today, so we will get started, but I wanted to let you know that this meeting is recorded and will be posted to our website as well, and we'll share that information with you when it becomes available. But for now, I would like to turn things over to my colleagues who have joined me today, Angie Harris, Associate Vice President for Student Life, and Lauren Strunk, the Executive Director for the Wellness Center, to share some more with you about the resources that I mentioned.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, as Sarah said, for spending your afternoon, potentially your lunchtime with us today. And so my name is Lauren Strunk. I am the Executive Director of the Wellness Center here at Dickinson College. And so the Wellness Center, what we do in our office is we have the Counseling and Psychiatric Services office, we have Student Health Services, and then we also have Nutrition Services. And so I just want you to keep that in mind as I talk to you about various things throughout this presentation. So the first step is really to talk to you about, what are we going to talk to you about? What is the purpose of this presentation? So of course, it's to help your student thrive at Dickinson. We're going to break that down a little bit more to you on the next slide. So we're going to provide you with an overview of common academic and social transition issues. So things that are very common for first-time and college students to experience. We also want to have the opportunity to talk to you about some of the common challenges that students encounter. And so what that means is there is a Q&A section for you to ask questions. We encourage you to use that. This is your time, and so it's important for us to answer the questions that you have. And then we also want you to have a better understanding of the role that you play in resolving concerns that your students have, as well as what role the faculty and staff here at Dickinson play. And so as you may know, the Dickinson College mission is to provide a useful, innovative, and interdisciplinary education in the liberal arts and sciences to prepare students to lead rich and fulfilling lives of engaged global leadership, working for the common good. And so that's the part of the reason why we are here, because we want to make sure that your students are able to achieve that mission and that they don't have any concerns that may distract them from that opportunity.
So one of the reasons we want to talk with you today is to kind of share our philosophy of working with parents. We really do want to partner with you as we encourage your students' confidence and success at Dickinson, and especially as they have challenges that they may encounter. When they come to us with a challenge, we're going to encourage them to problem solve on their own and take appropriate actions. And as parents, you can also do the same. You can help us by also encouraging them to develop those problem solving skills. It can be natural to want to kind of step in and try to solve the problems for them. But this is a really important piece of their learning. while at Dickinson. And so we do welcome you to call, but if you do call us first and we haven't really talked with your student, we will often ask if we can have the opportunity to talk with your student about what's going on. And then ideally, maybe we would all come together and talk about the issue. One thing that's likely different from their high school experience is that we really don't report out grades or social or even medical or personal problems to parents. We have to keep that private based on federal law that I'll talk about in just a minute. So even if your student gives us permission to talk, we won't actually proactively send information to you, but we're happy to talk with you if you call and check in, and there is a release on file. One of the most important things is when there's an emergency or when you're really concerned about your student, that you call and talk to and let us know. Sarah, if you could go to the next slide. There's two, you can either call the Vice President and Dean of Student Life office, which is my office, and that number is listed there, or the Department of Public Safety is available 24/7, 365. So all the time, that's the number that you can reach someone, and we can kind of check in with your student, especially if it's a more serious or immediate concern about their mental or physical well-being. So I mentioned FERPA, the federal law that requires us to keep your students' educational records private as they're attending Dickinson as a federally funded school. We have to abide by this law as well. And so again, your student can sign a release that would allow us to speak with you and give us the opportunity to talk with you. But often your students want to involve you in the conversation. And so we will encourage that, especially when we think it's appropriate to and needed to involve parents or guardians. We will definitely encourage that. We're not trying to keep information from you, but we're really going to try to follow your students' lead as they are becoming adults. I know it's difficult to think of them as adults, but as over 18, we really are starting to try to teach them to take responsibility for their own education.
And so some key transition points for your students during their first time in college will feature some high points and potentially some significant personal or academic challenges. And so this is very common when it comes to any type of change. If you recall maybe your student going from middle school to high school and what that adjustment might look like, it's very similar in a lot of ways. The main difference here is that your student is going into a space where they don't know anybody. And so that can be stressful, because previously they spent potentially 12 years of their lives with the same group of people. And so that could be challenging. And in addition to some students maybe didn't have to study as much in high school, right? It just naturally came to them, whereas college oftentimes is more intensive. And so students have to learn how to study if they've never studied previously. And so that can also be a challenge. And then the changing seasons of the academic year. And so what that means is, the first couple of weeks aren't as busy academically for students. The first week of school we often call syllabus week because they're just learning about the requirements of their classes, but they're not quite doing much work that first week. But as we progress to October, November, a lot of exams are coming up. And so for them to learn the ebbs and flows of the academic calendar. And then just so looking ahead as we talk to you during this session, again, if you have questions, be sure to ask us because we are here to help you support your student during this transition process. And so some common concerns, and this says family concerns, but I feel like students have these concerns too, homesickness. So, how am I going to adjust to college life, being away from home, involvement and engagement? How am I going to make friends? How am I going to find my people? living with a roommate. And so some of your students may have siblings, some may have never had to share anything. And so that's a challenge. We joke in the college world of, October is National I Hate My Roommate Month, because, the first couple of weeks of the transition, everybody's on their best behavior, but then October comes and people start showing their true colors. Maybe one roommate's a little bit cleaner than the other. And so, being able to have those conversations, communicate with your roommate, those are challenges for students. They may have never done that before. Making the choice about alcohol and drugs, and if that's something that they plan to participate in or don't. Common health concerns. So what if I get sick? For many students, this whole time, their parents made those appointments for them. And so now this is transitioning on them to take care of themselves when they're not feeling well. Safety, how to stay safe on campus. Sexual violence prevention. We talk a lot to students about sexual violence and how to keep safe. And then finally, academic support, which I alluded to earlier in regarding to that transition from high school to college. And so when we're talking about homesickness and adjustment, some things that you can do as parents of first-time and college students is understand that this is a normal part of the transition. And so it's important for them to embrace the suck, if you will, right? Because it's going to be hard initially, and also for you to be patient. And so realize that you may be hearing from them the same thing. I don't know anybody. I feel alone. I don't know how to make friends, and just listening and validating their feelings that this is very normal. And it could take up to a year for them to really start feeling connected to campus, and that is okay. And then encouraging them to come home when they can, but also really encouraging them to try to stick it out, stay on campus, go to events. There's a ton of events that are going to be offered to your student so that they can get involved. We as student affairs professionals really understand how important engagement is. And so we do provide a lot of opportunities for your student. And then remind them of past successful transitions. Like I said earlier, the transition from middle school to high school and things of that nature.
So we know that students have it assists in their transition, but also it helps them with their success by being involved outside of their academic schedule. And so we really do encourage students to find, one or two campus activities that they really want to focus on. In their first year, often they'll do more than one or two things. And so in fact, we probably from their experience in high school, they've been like busily trying to get that, resume built to apply to college. And now we really want them to kind of just focus in. And so they might initially, look into several different clubs or organizations, but it becomes difficult to keep up with all of them, and actually could be a distraction in the end to their academics. So we find that, deep involvement with one or two activities is really a good boundary. We encourage them to think about things that were different from high school, that we have several different clubs and organizations. Likely we're going to have something that they've never even really thought about before. And so just kind of encourages that open mind, and trying something new is a possibility. And they may not do that on day one, but they have 4 years. And so thinking about their time and being intentional about the activities they choose is important. You can help them with that. We do offer lots of different events, as Lauren shared. We have a online platform called Engaged that helps facilitate their engagement outside the classroom. This is where they'll find a calendar of events. It's also where they'll find clubs and organizations, and they can reach out to different clubs and organizations and find out when they meet and those kind of opportunities. So that platform, will talk with them about it at orientation. But sometimes we hear, that, there's nothing going on. And so if your student is calling home saying there's nothing going on, I can assure you that's far from true. If anything, there's probably too many things to choose from going on. And so encouraging them to find this calendar is a helpful thing. So Lauren mentioned living with a roommate or roommates. It's difficult to live with people you love, right? And so when you're moving in with strangers, it is a difficult thing. But we do have staff that are living in the building and they living on campus and there to support them. They'll have a resident advisor who they'll meet on day one, as basically as soon as they move in, they'll meet their resident advisor, who's an upper class student who's there to kind of support their experience as first years. As they're getting along with their roommate, facilitating that communication, we really don't want to put so much pressure on that relationship. We hope that students will get to know their roommate, will spend time with them, but sometimes there's pressure for that person to be their best friend or their closest friend. And really, that's not necessary, really. It's really more necessary that they communicate well enough to just get along in the room. If they become super close, that's icing on the cake. But we really are looking for them to practice these skills that are really valued by employers. They will hear more about this through their residential experience. But if things are not going well, we do hope you'll let us know. I think right now they just got their housing assignments on Tuesday, and it's really tempting now to be looking at social media accounts and making some kind of judgments about who they might be living with based on social media. And I would just caution you to think about what we put forward on social media is not always an accurate portrayal of who we are. And so it's a lot of highlights, or it's a persona that we want to put out there. And so it's a two-dimensional representation of who we are as humans. And so I do hope that you'll try not to focus too much on that social media and encourage them to talk to their roommates, give them a call. On our Residence Life and Housing website, we have some questions that we've developed to help students start to have those first conversations with their roommate. And so that can be a really good resource. But again, if things are not going well, please let us know. Talking to their resident advisor or talking to our Residence Life staff, and we'll try to do what we can.
So on the next two slides, I'm going to share with you some statistics regarding alcohol and other drugs. These statistics are from the 2020 core survey, which is a survey that was created for students in higher education to talk about their perceptions of alcohol and drug use. And so while I'm not going to go through each statistic, one thing I do want to point out is that what students think other students are doing is very different from what students are doing. And so when you're talking to your student, if they bring up alcohol and drugs and, they say, well, everybody does this, that's probably not true. And so we have a lot of students that choose not to engage in any alcohol and drug use. And so it's important for us that we share that information so that students don't feel isolated. I think when we think about how college life is portrayed in movies and things of that nature, we see a lot of alcohol and drug use, and that's just not accurate. And so when you're having these conversations with your student, keep in mind these different statistics. And so on the next slide is the drugs and other substances statistics. And again, very similar. You will see that perceived use is different than actual use. One thing I do want to point out, because there have been a lot of changes in marijuana legislation over the past couple of years, it's important that when you think of usage on a college campus, especially when we talk about medical marijuana, because we're federally funded and medical marijuana is not acknowledged through federal guidelines, that it is prohibited, which means that even if a student has a medical marijuana card, they use it at home, it's not something that they could use here on campus. And so next, I just want to talk to you about how we address perhaps concerns regarding alcohol and other drugs. So we use a harm reduction approach, meaning that we want students to make informed decisions about alcohol and drug use, meaning that they learn as much as they can, and then they decide for themselves if this is something they want to partake in. And so all students get multi-step alcohol education. If a student were to drink too much and potentially go to the hospital, they will oftentimes receive outreach from a care perspective. How are you doing? Maybe how did this happen, right? That type of conversation, but that they could also potentially go through the conduct process on campus. And then in regards to treatment, if a student realizes that they have a problem and they want help, we have an alcohol and other drug counselor on campus that can assist them with that process so that they can get support. From a parent or family member perspective, it's really important for you to have open conversations with your student, emphasize when to seek help, emphasize the importance of being open about needing assistance, and also having those open lines of communication so that your student feels comfortable talking to you. And so, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, this is a new time for your student in that if they get sick, you might not be able to pick up the phone and say, oh, I made a doctor's appointment for you. The great thing is that we have the Wellness Center on campus, which, as I said earlier, I am the executive director of. And so students can come here. There's no cost. It's part of their tuition for any of the issues listed here. So a common cold, pink eye, the flu, GI issues, seasonal allergies. I am an allergy sufferer. I can tell you allergies get a little intense here in Pennsylvania. And even COVID-19, so we do have testing here. So if your student was symptomatic and we were concerned that it could be the flu or COVID, we will test to make sure so that they get the support that they need. We also do STI testing. And then we also have the Counseling and Psychiatric Services Office. So students can come for group counseling, they could go for individual, and then we also have a psychiatrist on staff. And so what can you do to help, right? So this is, just to reiterate, this is a community. So it's us helping your student, you helping your student, and us working together to make sure your student is successful. So encourage them to get the flu shot, to make sure that they participate in good hygiene. Sleep is very important. Students need about 7 to 9 hours. Oftentimes, if a student is not sleeping well, it can manifest into different types of symptoms, which may look like anxiety or depression when it's actually just they're functioning with lack of sleep. Something that's not on here is hydration. So making sure they're staying hydrated, drinking enough water, exercising, movement is really important. And then basic self-care. So knowing when they need breaks, what helps them with their mood, building that into their schedule so that they're always making time for them. Also encourage them to sign up for FISH, which is the first year student health program. And so through FISH, your student would be able to meet with an individual from our counseling center, an individual from health services, and someone from nutrition to talk about the different services we offer. We find this is really helpful so that when your student does need somebody, they already have a kind of like a face to put with a name, like, oh, I remember I met that person during the FISH program process. And so it allows a little bit more comfortability when they do need to use the Wellness Center. The Wellness Center is confidential, meaning very similar to when you go to the doctor's office. We do not share that information without the appropriate releases. And we do have some late nights. So Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we are open till 7 p.m. And then Tuesday and Fridays, we're open till 5. And just remember, if you have questions, you could always reach out to us. And we are happy to help. Angie's office is really also a great resource if you're just not quite sure who to call or where to go. And so I was joking in a previous presentation, like, oh, does anybody know what COVID is? Because we've all lived this COVID life for quite some time now. So just a reminder, I know many of you received the messaging earlier this week. Students are required to be vaccinated for COVID-19 by a WHO approved vaccine. We do allow for religious or medical exemptions. They can contact us at the Wellness Center if they have questions about the exemption process. And it's really important that students submit this information to the patient portal versus emailing it to us to avoid any delay in processing. Anybody who is unvaccinated is being asked to wear a mask and to physically distance. Faculty are permitted to ask students to mask in a classroom if they have some concerns, such as if they are immunocompromised or have someone at home that's immunocompromised. And individuals who are unvaccinated will participate in regular testing to ensure that they are healthy and safe while they're here.
So as Lauren mentioned, this is a community, and within the community, safety becomes everyone's responsibility. I think Carlisle is a relatively safe place. However, crime can happen anywhere, and it does happen here in Carlisle as well. You know, we do have, for their residence halls, there's our 2 layers of security. The first layer would be their card access to get into the building. They'll use their ID card to swipe to get into their building, and only students who live in that building have access to that building. And then for their room door, they'll have a room key to use to keep that room door locked. And so we do encourage them to lock that door. We often find students taping locks or propping doors, and so we have staff looking for that all of the time, because we really do want to try to keep all the doors locked and things safe. It's a good idea to, especially in the first, when they're getting to know campus and Carlisle, to kind of explore with a friend or two. You know, it's a good opportunity to take a walk with your new roommate and get to know each other, discuss some of those questions that I mentioned earlier. But you know, it's good to walk, especially when they aren't familiar with the area, to walk with other folks. The Department of Public Safety is they are police, they are sworn officers. And so they're available, again, as I shared, they're patrolling campus every day of the year, 24 hours a day. They also provide a campus shuttle that kind of does a route around campus, even to some locations off campus, such as Walmart. I think the Carlisle Diner becomes also a popular location for students at night. So that shuttle is helpful for students. If your student is at the library studying late and maybe their friends have already gone home and they find themselves by themselves, they can call DPS to get an escort back to their building, so they don't have to walk alone. I think another piece, safety, another thing I should probably have mentioned earlier is online safety, and thinking about the messages they may be getting in their email. We do, unfortunately, college campuses can be a target for phishing scams. And so we do, our IT department, or our library and information services department, they do a lot to try to keep those scams from coming through into our emails and into your students' emails, but they do come through. And so you're helping your student kind of think through, you know, when they get that message that about the job that's probably too good to be true, or asking anyone to send them money, those kind of things, even if it looks like it's coming from someone at the college, like the college president or a respected staff member. We've seen those kind of come through, and unfortunately some students have fallen victim to those scams. And so they do things like there's a banner that goes across all emails that come from off campus. Always encourage students to look at the email address. Does the email address actually make sense? Especially if the email seems a little too good to be true. So, and then lastly, we use a system called Red Alert. That's our campus kind of communication across the community, where students they'll learn about this during orientation, but they'll sign up to get text message, a phone call, or an email when there is a campus emergency. And this is where we would communicate if there is like threatening weather that could be dangerous, or even, you know, if there's a campus shooting or something like that. So that's our system for communicating in those emergencies. sexual violence is unfortunately becomes a significant issue on college campuses, often mixing alcohol and dating and even just there just can be some unhealthy situations. And so we do a lot of education around for students around this, in particular bystander intervention, so they could step in if there's a something unhealthy they see going on with a friend or a classmate. We do healthy relationships education, healthy masculinity programming. There's a peer education program for students who are passionate about this to talk with other students. There will be sessions. They've already had to do online sessions prior to coming for move-in. There'll be more information during orientation and then even going into extended orientation. So our sexual misconduct policy falls under the Title IX office, and Kat Maddock is our Title IX coordinator and coordinates all of those opportunities for education as well as response if necessary. And then academic support. The academic advisor is a really important resource. Many of your students may have already met their academic advisor, or at least via phone. A lot of the academic advisors did the summer advising calls last month. But if they haven't, they will meet them during orientation, as their academic advisor is their first year seminar professor. And so they will see their academic advisor in class twice a week, which is a really great it helps to build that relationship. It's a really important faculty member for your student to get to know. The staff in the Center for Advising Internships and Lifelong Career Development work together also in collaboration with your academic advisor. It's an integrated center that works with both academic advising and career development, so that we can prepare your students for what's next after Dickinson. Each student will be assigned what they refer to as a launch technician. They'll meet that person, that contact during orientation. And that contact can really help prepare them over the next 4 years, prepare them for a successful launch for what's next after Dickinson. They can help with thinking through classes and how those classes and major and choosing a major, and then how that kind of could prepare them for different careers along the way. And so it's a really important contact. I know, I'm sure it pleases many of you to know that they're going to have a contact in the Career Development Center from the very start. And so I encourage them to get to know that person. Access and Disability Services is a really important office, especially if your student had an IEP in high school. I encourage they will support any students that need accommodations for disabilities. If your student's thinking, oh, I'm not gonna, put my disability on file, I think I can do it on my own, I really would caution them to at least get it documented, see what accommodations they can qualify for, and have them in place. We know that students who do qualify for accommodations and use those accommodations do have a higher GPA overall, and so it really can be an important service. And so I do encourage you, if you have, especially if that's on your radar, to be in touch with that office if you have not been already. Connected to Access and Disability Services is the Strategies, Organization, and Achievement Resources Office, SOAR. This is where your student can go to get resources around study skills, note-taking, test-taking, time management. There are a lot of resources that they put online, and then they also have like hard copy resources in their office. They can also meet with your student to talk through any of those issues. So a really excellent academic support for students who might need it. We have an award-winning writing center. Your student will become familiar with the writing center, especially through their first year seminar. They'll learn through that first year seminar, which is focused on kind of writing at the college level. They'll learn how to access the writing center and the tutors that are available through the writing center, and the quantitative reasoning center, which is a newer center for us, but also just as strong and just as helpful as the writing center for those who are needing assistance with more quantitative academic issues.
So just to provide an overview of some offices we have talked about and some that maybe we haven't. Athletics is a great way for students to show their school pride and to observe games that are offered on campus. If your student is a student athlete, obviously athletics is going to be a big part of their experience here at Dickinson. The Department of Public Safety, which you will often hear us say DPS, is a strong ally on campus. They keep our campus safe. They are oftentimes the first group of people that students will reach out to after hours for assistance. And so we encourage your student to know that the number for calling public safety. As Angie mentioned, residence life and housing is invaluable in ensuring that your student has a successful living experience here. And then student leadership and campus engagement, which is SLICE. It encompasses all the different ways your student can get involved during their time here. I know I saw in the chat questions about how to encourage my student to get engaged. We really feel like there is something for everyone here. There's a mix of introverts and extroverts and ambiverts. And so there is someone for everybody. And a lot of students do make friends in the residence hall, which is why it's so great that most of our students live here. It really provides that opportunity for community. And then the Vice President and Dean of Students Life Office is also a great resource if there's concerns. This is really the office to go to if you're not quite sure who to go to, because they can connect you to different resources if they don't have the answer, but this is a great place to start. And then, as I mentioned, the Wellness Center, we are here for your students' health and well-being, and that could be physical health, emotional health. And so please don't hesitate to encourage your student to reach out to us. And then we do have a number of offices on campus that really support our goal for equity and inclusion. And so we encourage your students to get involved in these various offices so that they could help with that mission. And so just to summarize, since you have been spending almost 40 minutes with us, we encourage you to continue discussing these topics with your students. Maybe something kind of popped up in your head when Angie or I said something. So we encourage you to follow up with your student about that. Remember that we are here to assist your student with their transition. And so we encourage you to encourage them to seek out assistance. And then also just thank you for spending your afternoon with us. We hope to see you at Move-In and at Homecoming and Family Weekend, which is September 17th through the 19th.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Angie and Lauren. Really appreciate all of that really wonderful information that you shared with us here today. And thank you to those who wrote into the Q&A with some really great questions as well. I think that the majority of them have been answered live or directly to you, but we'll try and cover a couple of them really clear as well. There were a couple of questions about cars on campus and also about students leaving campus. I can take that answering those, and Angie, feel free to chime in if you want to. But as I think we mentioned at one point, like, it's a really walkable campus. And for our first year students, we think that's the best way for them to get used to the Dickinson community and really get to know it, is be here and to walk it. And the Carlisle community, if some of you I know, given COVID restrictions, you weren't able to visit, but when you come, you'll see that the college is really immersed within the town. And so much of the places, so many of the places that they would want to go, restaurants or even Walmart, are also walkable distances, and we have a shuttle as well. It also becomes a space issue. We are integrated right into the middle of the town, and there are limited number of parking lots. And so that is the reason that first years are prohibited from having their car on campus. And then as far as students leaving campus for the long weekend in October, Angie, you might be able to give me a better sense of like the numbers of students. I get a sense that, well, I'll let you respond to it.
Sure. I think it's a good balance. We definitely have students that aren't able to leave because home is way too far away. It would be too expensive of a flight, or it just doesn't make sense given the distance to travel for the 4-day break. But students who usually live within relatively close distance of campus will leave. Some of our students will decide to travel, maybe go home with a roommate or that kind of thing, or go visit somewhere. And so it's really a balance. The campus is open. There are still food in the dining hall, and everything is still available. But we do see a lot of students that do take that time to leave campus and take a break from being here.
Great, thank you. There's a question about an Amtrak station nearby. The closest one is in Harrisburg, and Harrisburg is a 25-minute drive from campus. I've used that Amtrak station many times. It's really convenient, a great way to get to Philadelphia, or New York, or anywhere in between. We do offer shuttles on the holidays to airports and to that Amtrak station. So the Department of Public Safety, which has been referenced a number of times in this presentation, also oversees all of the shuttles and transportation. So they would be a great resource. Their section of the website outlines all of those opportunities that were offered to students to take advantage of those. There are a couple of questions about HIPAA and those types of releases. And Lauren, I didn't know if you could maybe address some of that as well. If a student, do they need to sign those releases or say, hey, you can contact my parents, or could you maybe go over that a little? I'm sure a lot of people have those questions.
Yeah, sure. I've been trying to answer them in the chat. So it can be confusing with HIPAA because it's a little bit different. It's more about just that we need permission in order to share any medical information, and that includes counseling information. And so your student will be asked if they want to sign a release, and then they could decide what information is shared. And so it's not an all or nothing type of situation. They can decide to share this, but not this. There was a question in here about local hospitals. So the local hospital would ask the student for, if there was anybody they wanted to share information. Of course, if there was a situation where a student was unconscious, then we have the ability to reach out to an emergency contact because that is considered an emergency. And so we're talking about situations where the person is lucid, conscious, and can make decisions. In a situation where none of those things are possible, then of course we can reach out to you because your students are asked to list an emergency contact.
Thank you. And then kind of a follow-up, the first-year student health program, the FISH program, is that something that they sign up for, or it's available upon arriving?
So I would check with your student because that question is in the medical history form that they're required to fill out when they submit vaccination records. And so your student may have already said yes, and you're just not aware. If for some reason your student completed that and they said no, and you want to highly encourage them to say yes, they could just send us an email and we could add them to the outreach list.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure.
There are, again, some more questions about shuttles, a shuttle that has gone up to New England in the past, and I'll have to check on that with you or with public safety and get back to you. I know that it has been offered in the past, but I just need to see what will be available for this year. So if there are questions that we're unable to answer directly right now, you can contact me at parents@dickinson.edu, and I will be happy to follow up with you directly or put you in touch with the people who can answer your questions or send you an appropriate link so you can read a little bit more on your own. Anything else from Angie or Lauren before we say goodbye to our guests today?
Just thanks for joining us. I'm still not used to just speaking to my own face on the screen. I miss seeing your faces. So we look forward to welcoming you at Move when you're here to move in.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. One thing I will add that has been said in a number of these sessions, and I'm not sure if we mentioned it again today, but please encourage your student to be checking their email. We do send them text messages from time to time. We do try to put information out on social media and reminders. We will communicate with parents, but we'll communicate with students much more frequently. So definitely, encourage them to lean into checking their Dickinson email once or twice a day. And that is something that will really help them stay informed and feel prepared. And truly, to tie back into this session, that will allow them to thrive here at Dickinson, because they'll be connected to their faculty members, their advisors, but also to great administrators like Angie and like Lauren, who are sending really important information that they need to pay attention to. So thank you for joining us today and for hearing all of this great information. Again, this program has been recorded. We'll put it on our website. And we look forward to welcoming you to campus and meeting you in person very soon. So thank you, everybody. Have